If your work environment is stable, now you feel safer. Now you feel, more connected. Now you feel like you belong. But if you feel like, every Friday that rolls around, you're on the bubble, and there are shops like that. Fridays are notorious for, out the door. And that is a function of client turnover, instability in those relationships. So, I also look for their track record with agencies. How long have they been with partners? I don't want a client for 3 years. I want a client for 10. You're going to do your best work in years 2, 3, and onward. The industry average is 3 years.
Welcome to Rise Leaders Radio. I'm your host, Leanne Mallory. As a leadership coach, I work inside organizations and I focus on helping leaders achieve their whole person potential and meaningfully contribute to their organization's mission. With this podcast, I share leadership best practices, developmental approaches, and stories of exemplary leaders. Hello, it's Leanne here with the second half of the conversation with CEO Mike Sullivan. In the previous episode, we heard from Mike on the inextricable links between brand, culture, and leadership. Mike is the CEO of the LOOMIS Agency, a full-service challenger brand ad agency who works with the philosophy of never underestimate the underdog. LOOMIS is an award-winning agency for both their creative and their culture. I have a special place on my bookshelf for books written about culture and leadership that are penned by leaders with decades of experience. Mike is definitely one of those leaders. In this second half of our conversation, we'll hear from Mike on the 7 elements of culture as outlined in The Voice of the Underdog, How Challenger Brands Create Distinction by Thinking Culture First, a book that he co-authored with Michael Tuggle. We pay special attention to challenges presented by COVID. There's a link to a blog he wrote about these challenges, as well as links to the book, LOOMIS, and Mike. Enjoy. In the book, you and Michael Tuggle list 7 elements of a great culture. And then I thought it was really brilliant just in the past couple of weeks, and I will link to this in the episode notes. You wrote an article, a blog post. You took those 7 elements and then you kind of cast them into post-COVID, or what we thought was post-COVID, whatever the heck is happening right now. Yeah. We're back in mask mandates here in Dallas. So I thought that was really interesting how you took that. Will you start, though, by talking about the context? Because you list some statistics about how many people have left the workforce and aren't coming back, and all of that. So that sets a really important backdrop. And then let's talk about some of those 7 elements as well.
Yeah. So millions of people have left the workforce, obviously. We deal with a lot of restaurant clients and service industry clients. And so I just feel for them because it's been a real struggle. And I think I heard the other day, maybe it was NPR or something, 10.1 million people left the workforce, or maybe there's 10.1 million positions open. And so folks are really trying to recruit. And again, I do think that, and it's been well discussed at this point, that is just sort of the great resignation, the great reconsideration in many respects of, what am I doing? Do I feel like I'm attached to my company? Do I feel like I have a purpose? Do I feel like I belong? All that stuff. And so people are sort of, retrading the deal, as it were. And we'll see how durable that is. But when we talk about culture and building our own culture, there are 7 principles. And the first one that we lead off with, it's typically, we just call it safety, and it's psychological safety, but now it's also physical safety. Thankfully, we haven't typically had to worry about physical safety issues, but COVID is on a whole new concern. But psychological safety, do I feel like I can bring my full self to the workplace? Can I be who I am? Can I contribute as I am and feel like I belong, feel like I'm part of the team. So the psychological safety part of that is critically important. With respect to the pandemic, I talked about this in the blog, not all of us process that in the same way. Everybody has varying levels of concern around it. I frankly think we need to be concerned about it, obviously. But, setting policy and keeping everybody in mind when we do that is really important. It's easy, as a leader to say, well, this is how I feel and this is how it will be. But there's no regard for what we call psychological safety. And until people feel like they are safe and they can bring their full selves to their employment situation, they're not going to be as concerned about tapping into a purpose at work, for example, which is the second thing that we talk about. What is it that I'm here to do? At Loomis, we talk about, fighting the fight for challenger brands and, how we do that. What's neat is that as we come back to the world, as it's waking back up economically, and many of our restaurant clients and other clients, gyms, for example, are trying to regain their footing, it's got our team really fired up about the contributions that they're making. And that's a lot of fun. And so that attends to purpose. And we've got friends and peers in business who have really deep purpose. And I just don't think it has to be completely profound. I think sometimes people get a little wrapped up thinking, well, gosh, what is my, big purpose?
It doesn't have to be existential at the company level.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You can just be trying to do good things and be consistent about that.
Yeah. So I want to interrupt you here and just ask, as you all are gradually coming back into work, was there any big conversation that you had with your team about, here's where we are, how are you all feeling? I'm curious about how that transition is going or how it started.
Yeah. So there's a constant conversation. So it wasn't a single conversation. When it all hit, we all had to go home. We did Zooms. Every week we do this thing called Around the Rail, where all of our folks would get together. We talk about the week's events, call out, shout outs, all that good stuff. I would do those on video. People really like that. I would do videos, updating the team on our thinking, just constant communication. It's Kip Tyndall, the container.
Yeah.
He said one thing in a talk that he was giving that I was at years ago. He just said, communication is leadership. And man, I could not agree with that more. So it's a constant dialogue. We work on Slack, like I'm sure everybody does. And we've got a Slack channel dedicated to this discussion and in real time. So an example, last week, one of our clients had a big conference. Everybody thought it was okay to do that, just last week. And it turned out to be a super spreader. Well, we had some folks there. We were all vaccinated. We didn't get it. Immediately, though, the organization wants to know, and again, we're small, 66 people. When did you know this? Who's in fact? We absolutely communicated 100% to everybody, let them know this was 6 days ago. Nobody showed up with infections here. Here is what our protocol is. People understand that. When there's ambiguity and questions aren't answered, people will fill them in.
Absolutely.
Always.
Absolutely. Yeah.
There's a vacuum.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, that's just a takeaway right there. Maybe, if your company uses Slack, just open up a channel just for safety, COVID protocols, how's everyone doing, and just have
sharing
that.
Articles.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Yeah, love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, I just put one out from the Atlantic on how the pandemic ends. It's just a great read.
Oh, good. Well, maybe I can get that link from you as well and put those in the show notes. Yeah. So after purpose, what's next?
Well, after purpose, we talk about vulnerability. And this is hard for a lot of leaders. It's there's a real urge, especially for type A's, achiever mindsets, to grab the reins and take over and command and control. But really, I've found, and I know that many leaders have found that if you'll just slow it down and you'll let folks know that, man, I don't have all the answers. 2 days ago, Wednesday morning, we were doing and that's why I led with that. Guys, I don't have all the answers. Nobody seems to have all the answers, but give me your feedback. Help me set our policy. And inviting them into that discussion, I think, is really powerful. And framing it around the idea that, man, I got kids, I'm concerned. I've got a mother that I'm concerned. We all share the same concerns. And here's a little bit of my humanity and leading with, an example. I think it's really powerful. And unless a leader demonstrates and signals that it's okay to be vulnerable, don't expect the rest of the folks in the organization to feel that way.
Yeah, I want to add something in there too about, and I guess this fits into vulnerability, but it's definitely another thing that I notice about your culture is that you share a lot about your personal lives. Your people bring their dogs to work. There's all kinds of stuff, going on with, each other's kids, what the kids are doing.
Yep.
You had a really nasty cycling accident at the end of last year. I guess you probably spent Christmas flat on your back in the hospital, but
I was, yeah.
Yeah. People really know what's going on in each other's lives to a certain extent. And there's openness about that. And that speaks to vulnerability to me as well.
Well, and I'll do it one better, Leanne. So mental health is something that I've talked a whole lot about with my team, and I continue to. That is the crisis that I don't think a lot of people are really talking about. My son and I talk about it a lot. He's studying for his PhD in psychology. But what I shared with my team, and I'm happy to do it, that look, I struggle. I've had bouts of depression. I've worked with a therapist. That's some of the best work that I've done personally. Over the course of years, I've done that. And man, I'm not embarrassed about that. I'm proud of that. And I want our folks to feel that way too. And so through this pandemic, because I knew that people were struggling, I got everybody a subscription to Better Talk or Better Health. I forget the exact name. And boy, the response to that was completely anonymous. But if they wanted to speak with somebody, a trained therapist, to talk through some of their struggles, it was there. And the feedback was just phenomenal. And even among the people who didn't feel the need to access that.
It's nice to know it's there if you need it.
Well, and that's all about vulnerability. It's one thing to say, hey, we have the service, but tell me a little bit about your life, Mike. You seem to have it all. You're leading this company and you drive a nice truck. There's a lot more to me. I'm a human too, just like you. And we can do all this together. So
yeah, we do have those stories about each other, don't we?
Yeah, right on.
Yeah. So we've talked about safety, purpose, vulnerability.
Yeah, belonging. Right.
Belonging. All right.
So and this is one of the things that I think the pandemic really taxed for organizations was this sense of belonging. So I'm not going to this physical place. We have these Zoom meetings, but boy, boop, you hit the button and it's gone. There's no chatter. There's no connecting. And so I think belonging was a really hard one for the folks to feel through the pandemic. Now, getting back together, that's great to do that. But anything that you can do to signal that this person is a part of what we're doing and it's important. That sense of being a part of is really important. We all know what it feels like to be ostracized in any given situation, and not maybe heavily, or not included. And that's certainly something you want to avoid at all costs. You want to see the opposite of that.
The opposite of belonging that just came up for me just now is discounted.
Love that. That's
so, right. Like being asked for my opinion, being included in the decisions versus just like being discounted or ignored. I would, for me personally, being discounted is opposite of belonging.
100%. And that's really true. And asking for opinions and doing it authentically, really, you can tell when someone really wants your opinion and where they're just
checking the box.
Yeah, right. So those are the kinds of things that you can still do through Zoom. There's just a lot that you can do better. Whatever you can do to create that sense of belonging is really, really important.
Absolutely. It's critical to our primal feeling of survival. Yeah, it is. And it leads into connection, which is another one of the points here too. So, human connection is like the most fundamental need and desire that all of us have. We need to feel connected to other people. All you have to do is reflect on times in your life when you felt lonely to really ground with that. Yes, we are in this fourth wave. This will abate at some point.
I do think that physical presence is really required to feel that physical connection deeply. My son made the funny remark to me. He said, Dad, there's a reason that people think it's easier to break up with somebody over the phone or maybe even over Zoom. It's like,
Right.
yeah, well, there's something about our humanity that is lost in this. But when we're in the same room, when we're with a person, that connection is unmistakable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was, might have been Daniel Goleman that talked about that. And I think he even has a book called Resonance, but like we are built to resonate with each other. And I think we can do a lot via Zoom, especially when it's just like you and I are looking at each other. Now we can pick up some things, but our brains are working really hard to figure stuff out right now about what this means. What am I missing? What do I make of this? Because our whole bodies are built to resonate.
Yep.
And we're missing that when we aren't. And I do think hybrid is probably the answer, but I think just full virtual. I'm an introvert. I love working from my home office and I miss people.
I'm shocked that you're an introvert, by the way. But
yeah, I am.
Introverted or otherwise, you're exactly right. I can't give you a hug,
Yeah.
And there is something awfully important in that. It's that intangible, tangible,
Yeah.
It's there, really important. Yeah.
So creativity is next on your list.
Yeah, creativity. So creativity works there is no problem that can't be solved with creativity, but all the other things really need to be in place to be on top of your game from a creative standpoint. You really do need to feel like you belong. You have a sense of purpose, like this is going in the right direction. I feel good about the people I work with. Now I'm able to bring my full self. And that's when creativity really catches fire. And of course, we're a creative services firm. So we, are always on the watch for things that enhance that and things that, may work against it. So creativity is critical.
Yeah, I think we just get a lot of psychic bandwidth freed up when all of the other things that you're just speaking about are taken care of. We're not having to worry about our safety. And I'm just thinking of Mad Men, and there's this stigma or this stereotype of an ad agency that might have been created back in those days. But I also know that you all deal with some tough clients. People can be really demanding. But that I wonder if safety and some of these things weren't in place, if that's not what drive people to into substance abuse when they don't have it. It's just a wondering that I'm having while we're on the conversation. It's like, wow, it's a pressure cooker environment. It can be. How can you be creative when you don't feel safe, when you can't be vulnerable, all of those things. And so maybe I turn to a substance instead.
Well, and that is rampant in our industry. There's no doubt about that. As far as our culture goes, this is another thing I was very deliberate about. I've worked at, many agencies, a couple of really big shops, and there were things about those cultures that I was just absolutely deliberate about changing. And so one of the things is, you said so much in that, but one of the things that I'll focus on is, again, the kind of clients that you bring into an organization. What I was trying to do when I built my culture was create stability first and foremost. So if your work environment is stable, now you feel safer. Now you feel, more connected. Now you feel like you belong. But if you feel like, every Friday that rolls around, you're on the bubble, and there are shops like that. Fridays are notorious for, out the door, and that is a function of client turnover, instability in those relationships. So, going all the way back to what we were talking about a minute ago, what do you look for? I also look for their track record with agencies. How long have they been with partners? I don't want a client for 3 years. I want a client for 10. You're going to do your best work in years 2, 3, and onward. The industry average is 3 years. And so when agencies lose clients, well, people go out the door. And that creates, I think that compact with the employer is super shaky when you're in an environment like that. So being able to hold clients for 7, 8, 10 years, we've got one client that's 20 years, it makes a huge difference in the experience of the folks in the office. And it absolutely supports it.
That's so interesting. I didn't think about looking at your potential clients' resume and their track record. I know that I looked at I'll go on LinkedIn and look at a person's like, how often are they changing jobs? And it's like, it gives me a question to ask, what's going on there. And I make up stories that I can, validate or, destroy. But same thing with potential clients. It's like, why are they changing agencies every 2 years? Am I going to pull a team together and do all the work to bring someone on that we might be leaving?
Look, I think that what we do really good work. I mean, we help clients, we move the needle. It's not for everybody. I really do look at it like, man, we've got a gift to give here. We're going to get fair trade for, the services we provide, and lots of agencies do, but it's not all clients are worth it. And that's not arrogance, but it's like, we work really hard on what we do. And I'm not going to sell ourselves and my folks short by just offering that to anybody.
Yeah.
It'll spoil it. And I'm just not about to do that.
Yeah. Well, and then I'm just looking at the last element here that you and Michael identified, which is North Star leadership, which is basically what you're talking about here. What are you, how are you directing and leading your team? How are you caring for them? So tell me a little bit more about how you think of North Star leadership.
Well, in my case, I look at North Star leadership, and my personal, I say scorecard for me is, okay, the best places to work stuff. That's like a high water metric, if you will. Our friend Drew Clancy talks about it.
Yes.
For the business strategy. And I really do love that because it has been for us. And so, again, trying to create the kind of place that I want to go to every Monday, and making sure that it's the kind of place that all of our folks want to show up on Monday, and holding that out. When I talk to our folks about these best places to work surveys, it's for them. I think it's a report card on me and on leadership, but it's a product of all of the efforts that I think we all share to create the kind of organization that we want to work at. And
I'm curious how your North Star leadership has been challenged during COVID and coming back. What have been the places that have felt paradoxical, or like you had competing commitments or whatever during this time? Or maybe you didn't. It's just a wondering I have.
I definitely have. I think any leader through this whole period has been challenged in ways that they never anticipated. It's interesting, and I think it was just adrenaline, to start with, but probably for the first 6 months, I was very sort of supercharged about all this, this whole shift to home and how flawlessly we did do it, and, how hard people were working. But I'm a little more extroverted. I like to be with my folks. And so for me, it was just really hard not to be able to do that. And so then thinking about when to bring folks back, again, being sensitive to all the sensibilities, if you would. And where we landed was sort of 2 days a week, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, we're in the office, and then we work remotely on other days, although a lot of people show up. I just think, again, going back to just the physicality and being with folks was really important. But then you start to have questions about, well, there's clients who want to have meetings in person, and it seems too early, and do we wear masks? And, our answer is do what you think is safe for you. If you don't want to meet in person, all of our clients, because again, we've got the right kind of clients, are amenable to that. They'll do a Zoom. So again, I don't know if I've answered that question really well, but these little things all accumulate to create the kind of culture that I think is really durable and supportive and good, and undergirds the whole organization.
Yeah, I really appreciate this whole conversation. And one of the things that I think about for people in your position leading organizations is that you kind of walk around with a target on your back, because you're the person that everybody is looking at, so anybody in a leadership position, I think that you're vulnerable, 100%. And I thank you for your leadership and for stepping up, because it's not easy. It is, what you're doing is difficult.
It's difficult. It's a privilege too, Leanne. I mean, I look at this and I go, my God, I'm blessed. Look at all these people show up and collaborate and conspire for our shared success. But it's just awesome. I mean, it's just really awesome. And I kind of get chills thinking about it, because I know how great they all are. And honestly, the question that I always ask myself is, am I doing enough? Am I doing enough to, provide the growth and the success that these people deserve. So far, we're doing okay, but that's what we're driving every day.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So in closing, I'm just going to read through these 7 elements again really quickly, and then I want to ask you if you have anything that you want to kind of close with, direct people's attention to. So again, the 7 elements that you and Michael Tuggle highlight in the book. And again, I really recommend that people read it. I'm listening to it and I love it because you and Tuggle are switching off every few chapters. And I love when the authors read the book, and it really is, it's just case study after story. And it's really, really entertaining and inspirational. Like I'm gleaning so much. So I do want to say, I'm going to read these 7 elements, but I think people ought to get the book. So the 7 are, safety, vulnerability, purpose, belonging, creativity, connection, and North Star leadership. So those are the 7 elements that you and Michael Tuggle write about in the book, as well as other things. And I will have links to you, Loomis, the book, the COVID article, the episode, and the Atlantic article there. And what else how else do you want to direct our attention? Do you have anything fun coming up, in the near future?
We've got fun company stuff coming up, hopefully when all this stuff clears out. But it'd be great if people wanted to take a look at the book and our blog. And we've got our podcast that we just started here about, 2 months ago. So we're 4 episodes in. Yeah, all that would be great. The only thing that I would say kind of in wrapping up is, man, I look at this as an opportunity to really reset. And when do you get that in a career and as a leader? And, coming in, we've got all kinds of new opportunities. And so I took full advantage of COVID and did a little offsite work from home, work remotely in Northern Michigan for about 4 weeks. And that was great. And I came back, really reset, really focused on what I think we need to do as an organization. And I'm supercharged. And I hope others will feel the same way and do that kind of thing for themselves.
Well, fantastic. Thank you so much for the time this morning and for our continued relationship. I love working with you and the folks on your team, and it's been a real joy.
You're a gift, Leanne. We appreciate you.
All right. Thank you so much, and have a fantastic rest of your day.
You too. See ya.
If you like what you heard today, subscribe to Rise Leaders Radio on your preferred podcast platform. Your ratings, reviews, and shares are also really appreciated. You can also visit rise-leaders.com for all the resources we talked about today and to work with me if you're committed to making your unique and positive impact. Thank you for listening, and remember, elevate your part of the world.